You guys can come down here and come here just just circle around a little easier. So before we get any deeper, I'll first be sharing a little bit about the history of the cave. So Niagara Cave was originally found in 1924, not by humans, but actually by 3 little pigs. One day, a local farmer realized 2 or 3 of his pigs went missing, so he had to send his nephews and a hired hand out to go find them. What these boys ended up finding were footprints leading by a 2-foot by 4-foot sinkhole, which would be right around the present day entrance. These boys could also hear the pigs squealing from underneath the surface, so they had to go back, get some ropes and lanterns to rescue them, and ended up finding the pigs about 65 feet underground. So it'd be about the end of this first staircase, we're about to head down here. Thankfully, though, these pigs didn't end up landing on a pretty soft patch of mud, so they eventually were able to make it back to the surface safe and sound. Now, once those boys found the cave down here, they also realized, or found the pigs in the sinkhole, they also realized that this was much more than just the sinkhole they originally thought it was. And there's a whole cave beyond what they even knew existed. So then it took a few years for people to actually believe it was down here and for word of the cave to spread. Eventually, the word of the cave did spread to 3 experienced explorers from Niagara, Iowa. These 3 men came, did a search for the cave, and found what we'll be going through today. And it was also these 3 men who then opened the cave up for public tours, then in 1934. So about 10 years after those pigs first fell in, and the cave has been open ever since. Now here we can also start to see a few different layers of the limestone rock we'll be traveling through today. All the rock we'll be going through throughout the whole cave will be known as limestone, and we have 3 different layers in this cave. Our first layer right here is going to be known as the Dubuque layer. And we can notice how it almost looks like bricks or blocks. This is how we can tell this layer apart from many of the others, and this is the only spot we can see this layer, as our next layer will begin right down here. This will be the Stewartville layer of limestone, and we can notice how it has those little holes or pock marks throughout it. This is how we'll be able to tell that layer apart, and this will be the layer we'll be going through for most of the tour, so I might point that out to you guys in another place as well. And then there'll be one more layer in the last couple rooms, but I can get there when we get there. I'm going to make sure as we head down this staircase in particular to watch you guys step and use a handrail, especially as this one right here will be the longest one in the cave. And just keep in mind that anything we have to go down today, at some point we will be having to come back up.
It is cold. Damn it.
So as you guys have come down here, I'm sure you guys have heard the sound of the rushing water. This is because our next stop is going to be the cave's waterfall. Now this waterfall is actually the cave got its name, as back in the 1930s when it was first opened, Niagara Falls in New York was a very popular tourist attraction. So they thought they would name this waterfall after that famous waterfall, they might attract a few more visitors. Now once we get down here, the waterfall itself will be about 50 feet tall, and we'll be standing on a platform overlooking it. With this being said, make sure as we're standing on this platform bridge to hold on to any phones, belongings, anything else you might have extra tight, as if we were to drop anything down into the waterfall, I sadly would not be able to get it back. Also down here, there will be a few places that the rocks kind of hang a little lower, so if you're on the taller side, watch your guys' heads as we come back.
It's so funny. What did you say?
I thought you were going to something else.
And then you guys do lessons down there, right?
I hope so.
Yep. So how are you all feeling after the waterfall and all those stairs? Are we feeling good? Do you guys have any questions about anything at this point? Sounds good. Here, I'll talk just for a second about how the cave would have actually been created. So all the limestone rock around us was formed around 450 million years ago. During this time, this area was covered by a shallow sea. And then as anything in this shallow sea would die, their remains would float to the bottom of the sea floor, which over time would decompose and harden into the layers of rock we see around us. So after all the rock around us would have been hardened, there would have been tiny little cracks in it. It would have been a few million years after that. And these little cracks are going to be known as joints. Water began to make its way through these joints, and we'll be following them throughout the whole cave pretty much. There's these big cracks in the ceiling. And water would make its way through these joints, and it created what would be pretty similar to a very powerful underground stream. And this powerful underground stream essentially would have been what would have carved out the entire cave that we'll be going through today, all naturally. If you guys are ready, you can continue on to the rest of the cave. Yeah. That's kind of in the limestone would have been formed, and then kind of the bulk of the cave would have been formed maybe 2.5 to 10,000 years ago. Coming over here, you guys actually want to look by your feet right over here. This is what we like to call the alligator's back. You guys might be able to tell how that got its name. But this is just what parts of the original floor would look like before they would come down, smooth it out, make it accessible for us to walk on. So if you guys could only imagine being one of those very first cave explorers, having to walk the very rough ground off the cave. And keep in mind, they didn't have the nice length that we do today, so they would have had a much different experience than our tour will be. And then coming over here, this is a formation known as flowstone. Now this flowstone is created just like all the other stalactites and stalagmites that we'll be able to start to find all throughout the cave. But any of these are formed as water is going to make its way through the soil and limestone. And as this water is traveling through these different layers, it picks up many minerals along the way. The main mineral these are made of, though, is going to be known as calcite. And then once that calcite will reach the opening of the cave, it will build up layer by layer to create formations that we can find, such as this one right here. And we might notice how some of them might almost look maybe muddy, or maybe some of them later on look slimy. They are actually pretty solid rock, even though we don't touch these formations. We do know it's just that little layer of water going over it that might make it seem almost a little bit more like mud. As you guys come into here, you can find our guys want to look at the ceiling above us in this corner right here? This is a fossil known as a gastropod. This gastropod would be pretty similar to a modern day snail. And all the fossils that we can find today will be about 450 million years old, the same as all that limestone around us. And speaking of that limestone around us, I pointed out those little holes or pock marks in this layer of it, of the strip layer. Now these are going to be what is known as a trace fossil. So this means before the sediment that created the limestone was completely hardened, there would have been little worm-like creatures coming through it, which were left behind little trails. These little trails then would have become what hardened into little holes. These little holes would have become filled in with more sediment, but then as the cave was being carved out by that water, those little sediment in those holes eroded away much easier than what was not. So leaving behind all the little holes all through the walls around us. Thankfully, though, we can't find any of those little worm-like creatures anymore.
So we should sit and remember this.
And as you guys make your way in here, feel free to have a seat. The benches might be a little wet though, so just double check before you sit down. You don't have to, but
We're fine. Thank you.
this room that we are in now is the cave's very own wedding chapel. Now, when they first came down here, they just kind of thought the shape of the room, how it comes to this point at the ceiling, made it look almost like a wedding chapel or church. And believe it or not, there have actually been over 400 weddings that have taken place down here since 1935. So you guys would only imagine having your wedding down here in a cave. I'd say that's a much different experience than most other weddings you could have. Now here we can also start to see 3 different kinds of stalactites that we'll also start to see all throughout the cave. If you guys want to look behind you at this wall, these ones are going to be known as ribbon stalactites, and these ones are the ones that we can find most throughout the cave today. And these ones are formed as that calcite will just make its way down the side of the wall, building up to create formations that we can see like this one, and like these ones on the side of the wall as well. If you look above that one right up here, we can find some drapery stalactites. And these little drapery stalactites are formed kind of as ribbon ones, will hang off that little ledge, and that kind of gives them their unique shape. And we can find our third kind if you guys want to look right under this little ledge over here. Now these tiny little ones are known as soda straw stalactites. Now these tiny little soda straws are formed pretty hollow, given that name. They will eventually fill in and become some larger ones that we can see later on. These ones in particular are kind of interesting because they are some of the youngest ones we have in the cave. We don't know exactly how old they would be, but we can estimate around 100 years old, if not older. So only imagine these could be even over 100 years old, how old some of the large ones that we see in the cave would be. Do you guys have any questions about anything at this point? We'll wait for this other group to come up, but then we'll head down here. And make sure as we're heading down here to watch your heads especially, as there can be a few places that the rocks hang pretty low. You guys can get another look around here before maybe. And that will be the last side group so you can start hanging out. Like I said, watch your guys' heads as it comes down here.
He's not going to leave it.
So this room we've now come down into is the echo chamber. Now you might get you might not quite get that echo effect you might think, but it's kind of a neat reverberation in this room. To make it, if you have a pretty low, deep voice, Humming with this voice works great, or you can put your hand into a fist and thump the sternum of your chest. You get that? You guys can try that out if you like. And this is the only spot in the cave that can work. So yeah, try it out now or on our way back. Yeah, it has to be very low for that to work. You guys can take a few more steps towards the middle. As we come up here, we can find our next fossil. You guys will look behind you at the wall right here. This is going to be a fossil known as a cephalopod. This cephalopod would be pretty similar to a modern day squid. What we're looking at right now would be more so the body of it, and it would have had tentacles extending on probably this side. We can also find one more of these a little later on in the cave. Looks a little different, but just keep this one in your minds as we come through here. Other side, make it look like a half circle. We're going to be looking at this wall behind. You guys can see on the side. And so coming over here, this looks just like any old ribbon stalactite close in formation. However, if we get out my special UV black light, these formations are fluorescent and they will glow. Now this is due to different minerals that make these up, and this is just because, or that give it that green color. It's because of those different minerals, and they are also phosphorescent, and this just means they can hold the light put onto it very well. So if I put my flashlight close, I can draw it. Oh.
That's awesome.
You guys are able to see that. But the saddle is formed through a whirlpool formation. So the whirlpool that would have carved this out would have been caused as that water was flowing through this main passageway where we're standing, and as it was doing so, it would meet with another source of water. In this case, it would be water coming through this crack right through here. And then when these two sources of water meet, they eventually create a whirlpool and carve out formations that we can see, such as this one right here. We can also find a few more of these a little later on, so just keep these in the back of your minds as well. And make sure we're looking up as we're turning the corner.
Oh my gosh.
This here is the cave's wedding veil. It is one of the oldest and largest ribbon stalactites in the entire cave. If you guys can see, it even extends all the way from that tiny little crack right in the ceiling. And now ribbon stalactites such as these can also have the nickname of cave bacon. Technically, some of the other ones that we saw could be called that, but I think this one looks a little more like it. Here we can also find a few of the cave's really only stalagmites. Now these stalagmites are different from the stalactites as they'll grow up from the ground instead of from the ceiling. And we don't have as many of these as maybe other caves might, and that's due to the shape of the cave itself. For these caves to grow and form well, water needs to be able to drip straight down on top of a flat or semi-flat surface. And how the walls are pretty narrow and curved the way they are, that doesn't really allow for that to happen. So that's why we have a lot more of those ribbon stalactites and not as many of those stalagmites. And now also, like that, when I showed you that phosphorescent and fluorescent rock, or with the light, any of these other formations would have that same exact effect. We should show that one because it's a little darker. There's not light shining directly on it, so we can get that full bright green color. But any of these around us would have that same effect. We can make our way into this room. You guys can kind of fill it in one more time.
5 and 3 up.
So once we've gotten to this room here, we're about at the halfway point. How are we all feeling so far? Feeling good? Good. So one way we can kind of mark this halfway point is if you guys want to look right over here. This is a formation we like to call the elephant's head. If you guys use your imaginations, we can see an ear, an eye, and a trunk way in the back. And at one point, this would have actually been an active flowstone formation like those that we've been seeing throughout the cave, but it has since dried up and become dormant. Now another thing we can find here is, so a commonly asked question we get is if it floods down here. And yes, that answer is yes, it does flood down here sometimes. Most of the time, like on average, it'll flood just in the waterfall if we get a large amount of rain. And if we even get a little more severe rain, we can get the last couple rooms of the cave flooded to where we have to close those off. But in 2008, this area had major flooding. We got a lot of rain in a very short amount of time, and it flooded pretty much the whole cave out. It was the largest flood we've had since the cave has been open for tours. If you look right up here, we can see how high that water would have been. With that line right there. And it coated all the walls in a new layer of mud. So even like the fossils we're about to see up here, they actually had to come down, a few of our geologists did, and scrub them off with toothbrushes and spray bottles of water. So that would have been a tedious job, but it makes it so we can see it a little bit better. Yeah, it's always kind of interesting. Do you guys have any questions about anything? Sounds good. There will be another group having to come up, so if we kind of want to step to both sides and give them a little space to pass. Now continuing on into the second half of the cave, the walls do get slightly more narrow. So this was also where we just asked that you guys don't touch any of the walls or formations, as we will be a little bit closer to them. I also say this because once we get down to the staircase and around the corner, we can find another flowstone formation. This one sticks out into the pathway just a little bit, so if we can just be extra careful and avoid touching this one, that'd be great. Sorry. You're good. There will also be one pretty low-hanging rock, kind of right down there by the elephant's trunk, so make sure you guys are watching your heads and avoid hitting that. We'll wait for the scoop to come up and then we can head. This next part is a little narrow, so definitely not the spot you want to pass a group in.
Elephant. Elephant.
And I'll do the last after so we can continue on. Again, make sure you spot your heads right down here by the elephant's trunk. And then right here is also going to be that flowstone formation that I had mentioned. So again, if you can just be extra careful and avoid touching that one, that'd be great.
Yes.
I pretty much feel just like that one night that you guys touched up at the gift shop just with a little water going over it. No, it's testing.
There it is.
That's how you do that.
There you go.
And right through there will be about the tightest spot we'll have to squeeze through.
Cool.
Let's stay narrow, but not quite that narrow. So here I'll talk just a second about the next type of fossil we can find. We can't see this fossil right here, but they're going to be all throughout these next couple passageways. It's going to be what is known as a fishrite. Now that name fishrite is actually very misleading because it's nothing near anything close to a fish, but it is actually more so of an ancient algae, kind of like a modern day lily pad would be what's closest to today. We'll be seeing some of the cross sections or side views of these, and it would be what it would look like if it were cut in half. This makes a lot of people think it almost looks like a little worm or snake crawling through the rock, but it is in fact an ancient algae or lily pad. And up here we can find a top view of one of them, so that may give you guys a little bit better understanding of how it actually may have looked. Also, as we come through here, you guys can feel free to get out your own flashlights if you have them, like on your phones or whatnot, to view them all, as there will be many you can see, so that might give you guys a little bit better look at it. I'll point out the first one, you guys, right up here.
Go ahead.
No.
Right up here is going to be the first of them on this corner. So that's kind of what we can find throughout the cave. And then we can start to find them all throughout the walls on either side. It's all over the place. Yep. And then right up here is going to be that top view that I mentioned. So again, this might give you a little bit better understanding of how it may look more like a lily pad than anything else, and we would just be seeing the one tiny little section right over here.
Déjame no ver.
Que pegar la cara aquí.
And then right up here, we can also find another one of those cephalopod fossils. So could that be like the body of an ancient squid that we saw after the echo chamber?
Estoy tratando de comunicarme con ellos. Estoy escuchando. Ellos están dentro y salen por debajo en las noches.
Sometimes they'll get kids coming and trying to count all of them that they see. They're like, I found them all.
What's the height that they're counting?
I don't know. The one stuff the other day counted 20. So there's be big ones up here. Yeah. I don't like the 30s and 40s, but there's hundreds now. They're probably. Maybe the last couple of good ones that we can find here, and there's here. So from now on, we won't be able to find too many more of those fishrite fossils, but this next part of the cave we'll be going down into is going to be nicknamed the Grand Canyon. Now this next part is going to be called that because once we get down these next couple sets of stairs, we can see up to 80 feet straight above us. So the ceilings are going to be very high. So make sure you guys are taking a few peeks up once we get down there. Also, once we get down here, we can find 2 more of those whirlpool formations. They'll be down these stairs around the corner on your guys' left-hand side, and I'll point those out to you guys once we get down there. Right up here is going to be that first whirlpool formation down here. Right up here we can find another one of those whirlpool formations. This one is definitely much larger than those other ones that we were able to see. Here's also a good spot to start to look up and see those tall ceilings. They're about to get a little taller, but it's almost a little wider at this spot, so we can see all the way to the top.
Ciertas partes de casi todo. Sí, So once you guys have all gone down that last set of stairs,
We've now reached the bottom of the Grand Canyon. So yeah, this is where we can see up to 80 feet straight above us. Now here you guys also might notice these kind of strange looking rocks sticking out. This is a rock known as chert, spelled C-H-E-R-T. And this chert is just a much harder rock than all that limestone around it. So as the cave was being carved out, these rocks did not erode away as quickly, leaving them behind where you can still kind of see them sticking out. Now also coming up here, there will be a couple pretty low-hanging rocks. So make sure you just watch your heads as we turn the next corner, and then after that corner, there'll be another staircase at the end of that staircase. So again, this is the corner to watch out for at the end of the next staircase. This room that we've now come into is the Cathedral Dome Room. Now this room is just formed by water coming in many different directions. And in this water, there also been some acids and minerals in it, helping it carve out as well. And also, as we've gotten down here, I'm sure you guys have noticed and felt it's gotten a little bit more wet as we've gotten deeper. So as we come down into this next room, it will kind of stay that way. But if you would like to stay a little bit more dry and not get quite as much of a shower, follow me and stick to the right hand side. There will also be one last low-hanging rock right down here at the end of the staircase, so make sure to watch out going underneath that. So this room that we've now come down into is the stalactite room. Now that name itself is pretty fitting as we can find all those different kinds of stalactites again. Here's some ribbons on either side. Some few drapery ones, more silver on that side. Some much older soda straws right up here, and even a few carrot stalactites, especially here in the middle, and on that side of the room. Now these giant carrot stalactites are actually what those tiny little soda straws like these ones right up here could eventually grow into if they're given enough time and water flow to them. And as you guys make your way up here, this will be the last room of the tour. Feel free to look around, good spot for photos, and let me know if you guys have any questions.
No,
picture if you guys would like. Thank you, I really appreciate it. Yeah. Yep. The alternate modes. Just as I come over to stand it, I like one of the corners, one on the sides more so I can right there. Yeah. So I can my shadow or by the light, whichever. So my shadow can kind of stay out of there. Yeah. Then I'll let you guys get a few photos. And then also we can do total darkness. So after these two, we can do that before our next group behind us catches up to us too much if there is. Yeah. Yeah. So, I know when we came down there wasn't any, but sometimes people can show up. So.
Yeah. Sorry.
I'll take a few here. Right there? Yep. 3, 2, 1. I'll take another one here. 3, 2, 1. Here, I'll take one. 3, 2, 1. Yeah. I appreciate that. Thank you. First. Yeah. I'll take a few here. 3, 2, 1.